The day I realized my marriage was over didn't begin with shouting or slammed doors. It began with silence and a single sheet of paper lying on the kitchen counter. Before I continue, please like and subscribe, but only if the story truly resonates with you. And tell me in the comments where are you watching from, and what time is it there. My wife had left a note in the center of a marble island, held down by a crystal paperweight we bought years ago in Charleston. I remember staring at it longer than I should have. The words were short, clean, final. I'm done with you. The house is sold. Pack and leave. I read it twice before my mind accepted what my eyes were seeing. The marble under my fingers felt unnaturally cold. Not anger at first, not even shock, just a heavy, sinking awareness that something permanent had just happened. I had come home from my cardiologist appointment that afternoon. The late October wind cut straight through my coat as I walked up the driveway. Dry maple leaves scraped across the concrete. From the outside, the house looked peaceful. Warm lights glowing through the windows. Smoke drifting from the chimney. The kind of home strangers slowed down to admire. I entered the security code at the front door. Red light. Access denied. I frowned and tried again, slower this time. My hand was steady, even with the faint tremor left behind from the minor stroke I had 6 months earlier. Red light again. I stood there for a moment, staring at the keypad, as if it had personally betrayed me. Then I tried the garage remote. Nothing. No click. No movement. Just silence. That's when I noticed a note inside through the side glass panel. Instead of forcing the door, I walked around to the back patio. The sliding door was still unlocked. She hadn't thought of that. Not yet. Inside, the kitchen smelled faintly of rosemary and garlic. She had cooked earlier. The dishwasher hummed softly. Everything looked disturbingly normal, except for the note. Upstairs, a floorboard creaked. Evelyn, I called. She appeared at the top of the staircase, framed by soft chandelier light. Perfect posture, hair pinned back, silk blouse. The same woman I married 17 years ago, just sharper now, harder around the edges. You got it, she said calmly. Got what? The message. I looked down at the paper again. You can't sell the house without my signature, I said evenly. A small, tired smile crossed her face. I don't need it, she replied. And in that moment, I realized this was an emotional outburst. It was a plan. I don't need it, she said again, her voice steady. The wind pressed softly against the windows behind me. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked. The house felt unfamiliar, like I was standing in someone else's life. What are you talking about? I asked, keeping my tone controlled. I'm talking about reality, Daniel. She walked halfway down the staircase, but stopped, leaving distance between us. Not physical distance, strategic distance. You had a stroke, she continued. You forget appointments. You mix up your medications. You sleep through half the morning. I can't keep pretending everything is fine. I'm recovering, I said. You're declining. The words settled between us like dust. We accepted a cash offer, she went on. Closing is tomorrow. They want immediate possession. You don't have authority to transfer the title. I have power of attorney, she replied, sharper now. You signed it in March. I remembered, after the stroke, when my mind was foggy and I was just grateful to still be alive. She had insisted it was temporary, just in case something happened, just in case I couldn't speak for myself. I had signed, but I also knew exactly what that document allowed, and what it didn't. You think I'm a burden? I asked quietly. Her jaw tightened. I think I deserve stability. There it was. Not sadness, not fear, calculation. Who's buying it? I asked. That's not your concern. And where am I supposed to go? She shrugged slightly. You have investments. You'll figure it out. I studied her face carefully. There was something beneath the calm surface. Urgency. Almost panic. This wasn't just about my health. Something else was driving this. I walked back to the kitchen island and picked up the note. The paper was thick, expensive. She had chosen it carefully. I turned it over. On the blank side, I wrote 2 words. Check again. I placed it back exactly where she had left it. She frowned. What does that mean? You'll find out. Without another word, I walked out to the back door. The air outside felt colder but clearer. My heartbeat was steady, stronger than it had been in months. I didn't drive to a hotel. I drove downtown. By the time I parked outside my attorney's office, my phone had already started vibrating. Evelyn. I let it ring. By 8 p.m., I had 12 missed calls and 3 voicemails. I didn't listen to any of them. Instead, I sat across from my attorney, staring at county property records glowing on her computer screen. The quitclaim deed had been filed that morning. It carried my name, and a signature that wasn't mine. But the real problem wasn't the forgery. The real problem was this. The house wasn't mine to sell. It hadn't been for 12 years. When I stepped back outside into the cold night air, my phone vibrated again. 17 missed calls. I turned the screen face down on the passenger seat and started the engine. Evelyn believed she had pushed me off the board. She didn't realize she had just made her first mistake. By 6:30 the next morning, the number had climbed to 23 missed calls. I hadn't slept much, not because I was upset, but because my mind was working. I've spent 35 years in estate planning and commercial asset structuring. When something feels wrong, I don't react emotionally. I trace it. Evelyn didn't sell the house because she thought I was declining. She sold it because she was desperate. At 7:12 a.m., I sat across from Margaret Hill in her office. She had been my attorney for 14 years. Precise, calm, the kind of person who didn't need to raise her voice to control a room. She filed a quitclaim deed yesterday at 9:03 a.m. Margaret said, sliding a copy across the desk. Use the power of attorney you signed in March. I nodded, and she continued, removing her glasses. She assumed you own the property personally. I don't. No, Margaret confirmed. You don't. 12 years ago, long before Evelyn started redesigning the house in shades of white and gray, I transferred the property into the Henderson Asset Protection Trust. Irrevocable, structured carefully, layered beneficiaries. I was a managing trustee. Evelyn had never cared about structure. She cared about outcomes. She can't transfer what you don't own, Margaret said. The trust owns the property. A power of attorney gives her authority over you, not over the trust. Has the title company noticed? I asked. Margaret allowed herself a small smile. They will. I leaned back in a leather chair and exhaled slowly. Closing is scheduled for 10 a.m., she added. Sterling and Wyatt, cash buyers, a young physician and his wife. They wired earnest money last week. That explained the urgency. Who's representing her? I asked. Margaret hesitated. You're not going to like it. I already didn't. Travis Lang. The name settled heavily in my mind. 3 months earlier, I had walked into garage late one evening and found Evelyn laughing softly into her phone. When she saw me, she had said it was just a developer friend. Travis Lang, mid-40s, smooth, overextended in real estate. Pull his business filings. I said. Margaret turned her monitor toward me and began typing. Within minutes, a pattern appeared. Multiple LLCs. Several dissolved. 2 pending lawsuits. Outstanding liens. Liquidity issue, she murmured. Major one. I replied. My phone buzzed again. Evelyn. I silenced it. Check our joint credit lines, I said quietly. Margaret's expression shifted as she accessed another portal. Home equity line is maxed, she said. 2 personal lines nearly drained. And there's a pending transfer request from your investment account. To where? She scrolled. It was flagged for verification yesterday. The bank tried calling you. I was in cardiology. She assumed you wouldn't notice, Margaret said. She underestimated me. I replied, an underestimation is expensive. I stood and walked toward the window overlooking the river. Morning sunlight reflected off the glass buildings like sharp blades. She thinks the house sale fixes this, I said quietly. Fast cash, immediate possession, clean exit. There's a forwarding address file with USPS, Margaret added. Where? Miami. Of course. Warm weather. New beginning. No Chicago winters. She's leaving, Margaret said. She thinks she is. At 8:41 a.m., my phone vibrated again. 31 missed calls. I finally pressed play on one voicemail. Daniel. Evelyn's voice trembled, not with sadness, but with strain. Why did the title company just call me? What did you do? I deleted the message. If she tries to close anyway? I asked Margaret. She exposes herself to serious risk, Margaret replied calmly. Wire fraud if funds move under false representation, misuse of power of attorney, breach of fiduciary duty, possibly criminal if pursued. I nodded once. Notify the title company formally. Send certified copies of the trust documents. File a notice of dispute with the county recorder, and draft a petition for a temporary protective order. Margaret studied me. You're not just stopping the closing. No. What are you planning? Instead of answering, I reached into my jacket and pulled out a thin envelope. Inside was a debt assignment agreement. 3 weeks earlier, I had quietly hired a forensic accountant. Evelyn's recent spending patterns hadn't matched her explanations. I didn't suspect an affair. I suspected panic. Travis Lang had taken out a private bridge loan 6 months ago. $500,000. High interest. Short term. No collateral. Personal guarantee. He missed a balloon payment. Through an intermediary holding company. I purchased that debt yesterday morning. At a discount. Margaret's eyes narrowed slightly. She doesn't know. No. Does he? Not yet. She leaned back slowly. So at 10 a.m., she believes she's selling a house she doesn't legally own to cover a debt that now belongs to you. Yes. She watched me carefully. This isn't revenge, is it? No. I said evenly. It's correction. At 9:15 a.m., we left for Sterling and Wyatt. My phone buzzed again. 37 missed calls. I turned it face down in the car. Let her sit with the silence. By 9:58 a.m., we stepped into the lobby. Polished marble, floor-to-ceiling glass. The kind of place where people sign documents that change their lives and try to look confident while doing it. I wasn't angry. I wasn't hurt. I was clear. Evelyn had written her note in bold letters, but she hadn't read the fine print. And at exactly 10 a.m., she was about to. At 9:59 a.m., the elevator doors opened onto the 42nd floor. Sterling and Wyatt believe in intimidation through architecture. Polished walnut walls. Floor-to-ceiling glass. A reception desk carved from a single slab of marble. The kind of place designed to make people feel small before they sign something permanent. Margaret walked beside me, her heels steady and precise. 2 men followed at a quiet distance. Plain clothes. Neutral expressions. Detectives Miller and Caruso. They looked like executives. They weren't. Through the glass walls of Conference Room B, I saw Evelyn. She sat upright at the far end of the long table, dressed in navy silk, posture flawless. To her right sat Travis Lang, in a tailored gray suit, leaning back with artificial ease. Across from them sat a young couple, early 30s. The husband had the posture of physician, straight spine, careful eyes. His wife held a leather portfolio with both hands like it contained something sacred. Between them lay a cashier's check. The air inside the room felt thick with expectation. Margaret glanced at me. Ready? I've been ready. At exactly 10:03 a.m., I opened the door. Silence fell instantly. Evelyn's face drained of color, so quickly it looked rehearsed. For a brief second, she stared at me as if I had stepped in from somewhere impossible. Daniel, she said, rising halfway from her chair. The young couple turned, confusion clear on their faces. Travis recovered first. He adjusted his tie and forced a smile. Well, didn't expect you. I ignored him and walked to the empty chair at the head of the table. Good morning, I said calmly. I'm Daniel Henderson. The doctor nodded cautiously. We were told you weren't able to attend. I'm very able. The title officer, a thin man named Peters, cleared his throat. Mr. Henderson, we were just preparing to finalize signatures. I'm aware. Evelyn's composure began to crack. You don't need to be here, she said sharply. I own the property. No, I replied evenly. You don't. Her fingers tightened around her pen. I have power of attorney. Margaret stepped forward and placed a thick folder on the table with deliberate weight. Power of attorney, she said calmly, does not grant authority over assets held inside an irrevocable trust. Peters blinked. Excuse me. Margaret opened the folder and slid certified documents across the table. The property at 14 Briar Glen Drive was transferred into the Henderson Asset Protection Trust 12 years ago. The trust is the legal owner. Peters looked from the paperwork to Evelyn. Her voice faltered. That's not possible. It is, I said quietly. Travis leaned forward. Let's not complicate this. The POA allows her to act on his behalf. On his behalf, Margaret repeated, not on behalf of the trust. The doctor slowly withdrew his hand from the cashier's check. What exactly are you saying? He asked. I met his eyes. I'm saying this house is not for sale. The room shifted instantly. Evelyn turned toward me as if I had physically struck her. You can't do this. I already have, I replied. The title officer stood up abruptly. We need to pause this closing immediately. Ownership has to be verified before anything proceeds. The doctor's wife leaned toward him and whispered urgently. He nodded and carefully slid the cashier's check back into her portfolio. Across the table, Travis's confidence began to crack. A thin line of sweat appeared at his temple. Daniel, he said under his breath, we had an understanding. No, I answered calmly. You had an assumption. Margaret handed another document to the title officer. Notice of dispute filed with the county recorder at 8:17 a.m. this morning. The attempted transfer is formally contested. Peter scanned the page, his expression shifting from confusion to alarm. Evelyn's voice softened, almost pleading. Daniel, please, we can discuss this privately. We are discussing it. She looked toward the young couple again, clearly aware of their eyes on her. This is a misunderstanding, she insisted. Daniel's been unwell. He doesn't always. Careful, Margaret said quietly. Evelyn stopped mid-sentence. Travis pushed back his chair and stood. This is ridiculous. We've invested time and money into this transaction. And you nearly invested in wire fraud, Margaret replied evenly. The word hung in the air. Fraud, the doctor repeated, stiffening. We're leaving, he said firmly. He turned to me. I'm sorry this happened. I am too, I said sincerely. You deserve transparency. They exited without another word. The door closed behind them, leaving only the low hum of the air conditioning. Evelyn turned to me, eyes blazing now. What did you do? I told you to check again. Her composure collapsed completely. You planned this. No, I said. You did. Travis grabbed his briefcase. We should go. He moved toward the door, but Detective Miller stepped slightly to the side, just enough to block his path. Not yet, Miller said calmly. Travis froze. Margaret placed one final document on the table. Formal notice of breach of fiduciary duty, she said, and a pending petition regarding financial exploitation. Evelyn stared at the paper as if she didn't recognize the language. You're filing charges? She asked quietly. That depends, I said, standing slowly, on how honest you prepare to be. For the first time that morning, fear replaced defiance in her eyes. This wasn't about the house anymore, and she was no longer in control. By noon, the story had already begun to circulate. High-end real estate closings in Chicago move quietly, but news moves faster. Travis Lang walking out of Sterling and Wyatt flanked by two plainclothes detectives was not subtle. Evelyn following 10 steps behind him, pale and silent, was even less subtle. I didn't follow them. I returned to Margaret's office. The river outside moved steadily, indifferent to private disasters. Barges cut through the water. Wind pressed against the glass. The city did not pause for betrayal. Margaret closed the door behind us. She'll call again. She already has. She'll try to frame this as confusion. It isn't. Margaret leaned against her desk. We need to decide whether this becomes negotiation or investigation. I removed my jacket and sat down slowly. Clarity first. She nodded, Then we finished mapping the damage. Within the hour, the full picture sharpened. 6 months earlier, Travis launched a condo redevelopment project in River North. He overestimated demand and underestimated holding costs. When pre-sales slowed, he secured a private bridge loan at 12% interest with a short-term balloon payment. He missed it. That's when Evelyn's spending increased. Wire transfers, designer purchases, a $48,000 consulting investment, flights to Miami. 3 weeks ago, I hired a forensic accountant. Not because I suspected romance, because I suspected fear. Affairs are emotional. Desperation leaves paperwork. The accountant delivered his report the same morning Evelyn filed the quitclaim deed. Travis owed $527,000 plus penalties. Through a holding company structured cleanly and legally, I had acquired that debt, which meant Travis now owed me. Margaret studied the acquisition documents again. You purchased his liability before she filed the deed. Yes. So she believed the house sale would rescue him. Yes. And now the sale is dead. Yes. Margaret exhaled slowly. This is layered. It had to be. My phone vibrated again. Evelyn. I let it ring. Are you going to speak to her? Margaret asked. Not yet. She'll come here. Margaret raised an eyebrow. You're certain? Yes. At 1:37 p.m., the receptionist called upstairs. She's here, Margaret said, glancing at her screen. Very insistent. Send her in. Evelyn entered looking different from that morning. The silk blouse was wrinkled, her lipstick slightly smeared, her composure cracked. She shut the door harder than necessary. What are you doing? She demanded. Margaret remained seated. Lower your voice. Evelyn ignored her and turned to me. You humiliated me. You humiliated yourself. Her hands trembled, not with weakness, but anger. This was a misunderstanding, she insisted. I didn't know about the trust. You didn't ask. You stopped including me, she snapped. You moved assets without telling me. I restructured protection. Exactly, she said. Without me. This wasn't about being included. I said calmly. She stepped closer. Then what was it about? I slid a thin folder across the desk. She opened it, and the color drained from her face. What is this? She whispered. Your solution, I replied. Inside the folder were copies of Travis's loan agreement, the assignment of debt, and a formal notice of demand. You bought this? Evelyn asked, her voice barely steady. Yes. You can't just... I already did. Her eyes flicked toward Margaret. This is coercion. No, Margaret replied evenly. It's lawful acquisition. Evelyn looked back at me, something fragile beginning to crack beneath her anger. You were spying on me. I was verifying patterns. You don't trust me. Correct. The word hit harder than anything else I had said that day. Her shoulders tensed. You think this is about money? No, I said quietly. I think this is about fear. I pressed a button on Margaret's desk speaker. A recording began to play. Evelyn's voice. Travis's voice. Clear. She doesn't have long, Travis said lightly. Evelyn laughed, nervous, uncertain. He's not dying. Not today, Travis replied. But you said the doctor mentioned vascular damage. A pause. I just need the house sold, Evelyn said. Once we close, we're clear. The recording ended. Silence filled the office. Evelyn stared at the speaker, like it had betrayed her. You recorded me, she whispered. No, I said calmly. You left your phone connected to the car system. She pressed her hands to her temples. You twisted this. I listened. Tears finally gathered in her eyes, but they weren't for me. They were going to ruin him, she said, her voice cracking. The lender was threatening litigation. I was trying to help. You were trying to rescue someone who made reckless decisions. Her shoulders sagged. I was scared. Of what? Of being alone. The confession lingered in the room. 17 years of marriage hovered between us like something fragile and already broken. What do you want? She asked quietly. I want control restored. You already have it. No, I said. I want acknowledgement. Her phone buzzed. She glanced down. Travis. She didn't answer. My attorney is filing a petition this afternoon, Margaret said calmly. Financial exploitation. Misuse of power of attorney. Asset freeze pending review. Evelyn's head snapped up. You're freezing my accounts? Joint accounts. I corrected until clarity is established. You're destroying me. No, I said softly. I'm containing you. She stepped back as if the word had weight. How many times did I call? She asked suddenly. 37. A hollow laugh escaped her. And you didn't answer. I was reading. She unfolded the note she had left me, turned it over. Read the 2 words I had written. Check again. Understanding settled over her slowly. The house, the debt, the recording. Every move she made had already been anticipated. You planned this, she whispered. No, I replied. I prepared. She turned toward the door, slower now. At the threshold, she paused. You're not the man I thought you were. I'm exactly who I've always been. The door closed behind her. Margaret looked at me carefully. This escalates from here. I know. My phone stayed face down on the desk. For now, it was silent. 2 days later, Evelyn requested a private meeting. Not at the house. Not at the club. Not by the lake. At Margaret's office. Neutral ground. Which meant she finally understood the terrain. I arrived early. I prefer rooms before emotion enters them. Before the air changes. Margaret had prepared a smaller conference room this time. No skyline views. No polished marble. Just an oak table, 3 legal pads, and a framed photo of water on the wall. Simple. Controlled. At 3:02 p.m., Evelyn walked in. No silk blouse. No designer armor. She wore a beige sweater, minimal makeup, and something else I hadn't seen in a while, uncertainty. She closed the door gently behind her. Daniel, she said. Evelyn. Margaret nodded but stayed silent. Evelyn sat across from me and folded her hands carefully. I want to speak without theatrics. This isn't theater, I replied. She inhaled slowly. You froze our joint accounts. Yes. You bought Travis's debt. Yes. You notified the county recorder. Yes. And you're preparing criminal allegations. I'm preparing options. Her jaw tightened. This is excessive. No, I said calmly. This is containment. She flinched at the word. After your stroke, she continued, leaning forward slightly, the doctors weren't optimistic. They were cautious. You forgot conversations. You left the stove on twice. You missed appointments. I corrected those patterns. But I didn't know if you would, she insisted. I didn't know how long I'd be alone. So you found someone? It wasn't like that. Then explain it. Silence. Margaret slid a legal pad toward her. Speak clearly. Evelyn exhaled. I met Travis at the club. He was confident. He made me feel seen. I let the word sit. After your stroke, she continued, everything felt fragile. You stopped talking about the future. You moved assets without telling me. I restructured protection. Without including me. The trust predates you. That's not the point, she snapped, then softened. The point is I felt excluded, like I was waiting for something inevitable. Inevitable? She hesitated. You dying. The room grew quiet. There it was. Fear, raw and unfiltered. You sold the house, I said slowly, to prevent loneliness. I sold the house to secure stability. For whom? She didn't answer. Margaret stepped in gently. Were you aware the power of attorney did not extend to trust property? Yes, Evelyn admitted quietly. Were you aware at the time you filed the deed? A long pause. No. And if the sale had gone through? I asked. She looked directly at me. I thought you wouldn't fight it. That almost made me smile. I fight quietly, I said, her eyes filled with tears. Travis's lender was threatening him, she whispered. He said once the house sold, everything would reset. And you believed him? I believed I needed an exit. From what? From waiting. The word echoed. Waiting for decline. Waiting for grief. Waiting for vulnerability. You didn't want a husband, I said calmly. You wanted insurance. That's not fair. It's accurate. Her composure finally began to fracture. You were slipping away, she whispered. You stopped touching me. You stopped laughing. I was recovering. You were withdrawing. The accusation landed heavier than any financial betrayal. Recovery isn't attractive. It's slow. It's humbling. It forces you to face weakness you never planned for. I didn't withdraw, I said quietly. I recalibrated. She shook her head. You shut me out. And you replaced me. Silence pressed in from every direction. Margaret broke it gently. Mrs. Henderson, do you deny discussing Mr. Henderson's life expectancy in connection with financial planning? Evelyn's face lost color again. You heard that recording? Yes. She closed her eyes briefly. I was venting. You were strategizing, I corrected. Her voice rose. You can't use one conversation to dismantle my life. This isn't one conversation. I slid another folder toward her. Inside were bank statements, wire transfers, and a partially completed beneficiary change request on my life insurance policy. Her fingers trembled. I didn't submit that. You initiated it. I never finalized it. I reversed it. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I never wanted to hurt you, she said, but you were willing to risk me. Her breathing became uneven. Travis said you might not live another decade. And you listened. I was afraid, she repeated. Fear explains behavior, I said softly. It doesn't excuse it. Margaret leaned forward. Here are the terms, she said. Evelyn looked up slowly. No criminal filing, Margaret continued. If full cooperation is provided, divorce proceedings uncontested, complete financial disclosure regarding Mr. Lang, and written acknowledgement of misuse of power of attorney. Evelyn stared at the paper in front of her. This will ruin me socially, she whispered. No, I said calmly. Your actions did that. She studied my face. You're not angry, she said. I replied, yesterday. And today. Today I'm clear. Her phone vibrated on the table. Travis. She turned it face down. How many times did I call? She asked again, almost to herself. 37. She let out a broken laugh. And you didn't answer. I was listening. To what? To who you are when you think I'm not watching. That was the moment she understood. There was no path back. She picked up the pen. Her hand hovered briefly. Then she signed. Margaret collected the documents. This becomes official tomorrow. Evelyn stood slowly. At the door, she paused. I never thought you were capable of this. I never thought you were either. I replied. She left without another word. When the door closed, Margaret studied me. You're sure? Yes. Outside, the afternoon light was already fading. My phone buzzed once. Unknown number. I didn't answer. The hearing was scheduled for 9 a.m. on a gray Tuesday morning that felt colder than it should have. It wasn't criminal court. It was civil, orderly, structured, quiet, but no less final. Cook County Civil Division doesn't look dramatic. No bright lights. No shouting attorneys. Just fluorescent ceilings, wooden benches polished by decades of nervous hands, and a low hum of lives being recalculated. I arrived alone. Margaret met me inside, files in hand, composed as always. Ready? She asked. Yes. Evelyn sat on the opposite side of the room. She looked smaller than I remembered. Not physically. Socially. 2 women from the club sat 3 rows behind her. Not beside her. Behind her. Watching. Travis sat near the aisle, jaw tight. His attorney flipped through documents with visible irritation. When the judge entered, the room stood. Judge Halpern was in his late 60s. Calm. Direct. The kind of man who had seen every variation of deception and no longer reacted emotionally to any of it. We were called forward. Margaret spoke first. Your Honor, this is a petition for declaratory judgment regarding misuse of power of attorney, attempted transfer of trust property, and associated financial exploitation. The judge adjusted his glasses and looked at Evelyn. Mrs. Henderson, do you dispute the trust structure? No, Your Honor. Do you dispute filing the quitclaim deed? No. Were you aware the property was not held in your husband's personal name? A pause. No. Judge Halpern nodded once. Power of attorney grant authority within the legal scope of the principal's assets, he said evenly. It does not override trust ownership. Margaret handed forward certified copies of the trust documents. The judge reviewed them briefly. And the debt assignment? He asked. Margaret gestured toward Travis. Mr. Lang secured a private bridge loan. Mr. Henderson lawfully acquired the outstanding note. Judge Halpern turned to Travis. Were you aware Mrs. Henderson intended to use proceeds from this sale to satisfy your obligation? Travis hesitated. Yes. And did you verify ownership of the property before proceeding? His attorney began to speak, but the judge raised a hand. Answer the question. Travis swallowed. No. The silence that followed was surgical. Judge Halpern leaned back. This court finds the attempted transfer invalid. The property remains vested in the Henderson Asset Protection Trust. He turned to Evelyn. As for misuse of power of attorney, ignorance may mitigate intent. It does not eliminate consequence. Her shoulders dropped slightly. Margaret continued. We request temporary financial oversight and full disclosure transactions initiated under POA authority. Granted. The gavel struck once. Not loudly, but definitively. Travis's attorney stood. We object to the debt acquisition being weaponized. The judge looked at him calmly. Debt acquisition is not weaponization, he said. It is capitalism. A quiet ripple moved through the room. The hearing was over. No shouting, no spectacle, just clarity. Outside the courtroom, whispers began immediately. Travis walked quickly toward the exit, avoiding eye contact. Evelyn approached me slowly. You won, she said. I didn't compete. She looked at me carefully. You could have destroyed him. I didn't. You could still press charges. I haven't. Why? Because destruction is noisy, I said, and I'm done with noise. She stood there for a moment, as if waiting for something else from me. And what am I supposed to do now? She asked quietly. It wasn't defiant. It wasn't sarcastic. It was hollow. That's your responsibility, I said. She nodded slowly. I was afraid. I know. And now you're accountable. Her phone buzzed in her hand. She glanced down. 3 missed calls, she murmured. Not for me. She silenced it. I didn't think you were capable of this, she said softly. It isn't cruelty, I replied. It's boundaries. She held my gaze for one last second, then walked away. Margaret joined me near the courthouse steps. Protective order will hold. Financial review in 30 days. Divorce filing can proceed cleanly. Good. She studied my face. Do you feel anything? Yes. Anger? No. Relief. The kind that settles in your chest like warm air after a long winter. As we reached the car, my phone buzzed again. I checked it. 37 missed calls. All from that first night. She had stopped calling after the hearing. Real silence now. The house remained standing. The trust was intact. The debt acknowledged. The illusion gone. 3 months later, I moved into a lakefront condo on the north side. Smaller than the house on Briar Glen. Cleaner. Intentional. Floor-to-ceiling windows face water. In the morning, the lake looked like brushed steel. By afternoon, it shifted into restless blue. I kept the space minimal. A leather chair near the glass. A walnut desk. 2 framed photographs. One of my father in his Navy uniform. One of me at 35. Breaking ground on my first development. No wedding photos. Not out of anger. Out of clarity. The divorce finalized without theatrics. Evelyn signed as agreed. No contest. Full disclosure. She kept what was legally hers. Nothing more. I did not accelerate Travis's debt. I did not pursue criminal charges. I allowed contracts to perform exactly as written. That was consequence enough. On a quiet Sunday evening in March, as snow melted along the shoreline, my phone buzzed again. A voicemail. Evelyn. Daniel. Her voice began softer than I remembered. I know I shouldn't call. I wanted to say I'm sorry. The word lingered. I wasn't thinking clearly. I was scared. Travis left for Miami. The project collapsed. I misjudged everything. I listened without moving. I didn't think you would fight back, she said. There was again. Fight. I thought you would just let it happen. I paused the message. The condo was quiet except for the steady rhythm of waves against the breakwater. I walked to my desk and opened the top drawer. Inside, neatly folded, was the original note. I'm done with you. The house is sold. Pack and leave. I turned it over. 2 words. Check again. Not dramatic. Not poetic. Precise. I pressed play. I don't expect anything, she finished. I just needed you to know I never meant to hurt you. The message ended. No tears. No pleading. Just exhaustion. I didn't call back. Not because I hated her, but because the chapter had already closed. At our age, love without respect becomes liability. Fear disguised as affection becomes manipulation. And silence, when chosen intentionally, is not weakness. It is sovereignty. The lake darkened as the sun disappeared. Lights flickered on along the shoreline, small constellations of other lives unfolding. 17 years doesn't disappear in a courtroom. It fades in increments, in the way you stop reaching for a second cup, in the way the house no longer echoes, in the way your phone no longer vibrates at midnight. Recovery taught me something I didn't understand at 40. Strength is not loud. It is structured. It is paperwork filed on time. It is knowing where the deed is recorded. It is understanding what you sign. It is choosing boundaries before resentment grows roots. My health improved. The tremor faded. My speech sharpened. I returned to light consulting work, not for income, but for clarity. When friends asked what happened, I simply said, we misaligned. That was true. Weeks later, I received a final message from a number I didn't recognize. Travis. Mr. Henderson, it read, I've restructured the project. I'll be current on the note next quarter. I stared at it briefly. Then I typed 1 sentence. Honor your agreements. No threats. No sarcasm. Just expectation. He replied, understood. I placed my phone face down on the table. Sometimes, late at night, I replay that first afternoon. The red light on the keypad. The wind across the driveway. Evelyn's silhouette at the top of the stairs. I don't feel anger. I feel gratitude. Because that note forced clarity. Forced preparation. Forced me to stop assuming partnership, where alignment no longer existed. You can love someone deeply and still protect yourself. You can forgive without stepping back into the fire. You can walk away without slamming the door. And if you've ever been underestimated, if someone assumed you would fold quietly, disappear politely, or dissolve conveniently, remember something simple. Read the fine print. Protect your name. And if someone tells you the house is sold, check again. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever faced betrayal, fear, or the quiet realization that you had to choose dignity over comfort, I'd like to hear from you. Leave a comment below and tell me where you're watching from. Share your thoughts. Share your lessons. And if you want more stories about boundaries, clarity, and the strength that comes from preparation, subscribe so you don't miss the next one.